welcome to everybody. And hey, we're almost at 2:01, so let's get this thing started out. I'll reiterate real quick. As we're going along, please ask questions. David and I are going to be talking about a lot of different stuff, and there's just for sure you guys are going to have questions, and I want to ask him those questions. So if you will post them in the window, I'll do my best to read those out as we're going along. And given the amount of stuff that's come in already, I'm going to clear those out. I think we should be good. But we've also got Max in the background. I do want to introduce Max. Max, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be here. Looking forward to this one. This is going to be really good.
Yeah. So Max is our moderator in the background, and so he'll be helping me out with some of the questions that are on here. And if anything comes up, he'll let me know. But I would like to send a warm welcome out to everybody for showing up to our evidence management webinar. It's been a little bit of time since I've done one of these things, so it's good to be back in the saddle a little bit and getting them going again. I will say I have a really good excuse. I got married back in March, so I admittedly pretty much most of 22, I've been refocused on some other things for the most part, but it is great to be back. And when it was time to get back and engaged and get these going again, my very first thought was, I got to call David Bragg up. And David, welcome, David.
Hey, thanks. Glad to be here.
Yeah, and so David and I go back a little bit. David, do you even remember how long ago it was that you and I first talked?
Yeah, probably in 2011. We were looking at dumping our old evidence management system, and I've been looking at some new products, so probably late 2011.
Okay, back when you and I were both a little bit younger than what we are right now.
A little bit younger. My hair was still gray then, though, so it's
that's good. Well,
grayer.
I do know that it's been some time since that you and I first met each other, and I will say for everybody, there's a lot of people on here that are very likely not Tracker clients. It is not my intent at all today to spend a lot of time talking about Tracker software at all. My absolute intent here today is to just simply broadcast David in the evidence room at the Bowling Green PD and do my best to give you guys a little bit of insight as to what's going into one agency here in the country. We happen to be in the same state together. I'm from Northern Kentucky and David is from Bowling Green, Kentucky. Most people may know where Northern Kentucky is. I don't know. It's 10 minutes south of Cincinnati, Ohio. I know that we are all big Cincinnati Bengals fans around here, and it is not very often that I get to start a webinar out by talking about being a big Cincinnati Bengals fan. But for the one time in my life that there's something to talk about, I'm going to take advantage of it. But David, for those that don't know where Bowling Green is at, why don't you give us a quick overview of where the heck is Bowling Green, Kentucky at?
Yeah, we're in South Central Kentucky. We're about 60 miles north of Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay. And are you a lifelong resident of Bowling Green, or are you a transplant from somewhere?
I'm a transplant. I came from about an hour and a half away in a little smaller town, but came here out of college. So been here 1980.
So you've seen that's you're a native of it now. You've been there long enough to be a native.
I've seen a big transition occur, not just in evidence, but law enforcement in general. So.
Gotcha. So when you graduated college and landed in Bowling Green, what did you start with the Bowling Green PD? I know you were a detective. How did you get to the Bowling Green PD?
Yeah, well, it's probably the third largest city in the state, so they had a pretty good reputation of being a good agency. So I applied, was hired, retired in late 2005 as a detective. Was absent for a few years, got bored. So the department called and asked if I would come back and work in our evidence room. So, and that occurred in 2011.
Can you really claim retirement if your second stint is longer than the first stint?
Probably not. Probably not. Yeah.
That's an interesting concept that you retired from the agency that you're working at and you're still there 17 years later. So I feel like at some point you just got to say, I've been with this agency for X number of years, and you just go all the way back to the beginning.
Yeah.
So what did you start out doing with the Bowling Green PD? I mean, you didn't go right into evidence in 1980. What have you done up until you got into evidence, and when did you get into evidence?
Yeah, I worked patrol for a number of years. Then was assigned to our investigative unit, retired. I was absent, in retirement for a number of years, and then came back in 2011. Actually, the chief had contacted me, our previous chief, and asked if I'd be interested in coming back to work in our evidence room. There's two of us that work here. We're both civilian employees, both full-time employees that handle our evidence room. So it's been a good run. I've enjoyed it. I enjoyed my first career. This is a little different, but I've enjoyed it as well.
Well, I'm just curious, did you ever imagine landing in the evidence room, or when you got a call about working in the evidence room, what was the first thing that popped into your mind when you got that call?
The first thing is I'm glad the call came because I was really bored in retirement. And secondly, I thought evidence, I've never managed inventory. So
Yeah.
what kind of challenge will this be?
Yeah.
And it was somewhat of a challenge. We had an evidence module that was connected with our records management system. It was severely inadequate. To say it was terrible is probably being kind about it. So
Yeah.
that was the first big challenge, is that we had just a messy RMS module for evidence management.
Yeah.
So we had some new staff coming in. So, there was a bit of a challenge that occurred initially.
But did you have any idea of what you were walking into? I mean, so here you are, you get the phone call, they say, we want you to run evidence. It's an old evidence system. You're imagining running inventory. You had no experience doing evidence. Did you have any idea what you were walking into?
No, never been physically in our evidence room prior to retirement, except for submitting evidence in the intake, and that was it. So I had no idea what our system or our operation looked like behind the secure area in our evidence room. Had no idea.
So when you finally stepped in there, I mean, what I'm just curious, did they tell you anything about what you were walking into, or did you literally just take it blindly? Did you ask any questions? Maybe that's the better question. Did you ask any questions about what you were walking into? And if you did you get any answers?
Yeah, I actually did. I called a retired evidence custodian who just recently retired. So I was peppering her and probing with questions about what I was actually getting into. So she gave me a little bit of heads up on what to expect, but it's still somewhat surprising once you got here.
Yeah.
Particularly how terrible it was to manage our evidence based on our current evidence module at the time. I had no idea. I sat down not long after being hired back, and I counted the number of keystrokes it took to log in a piece of evidence into temporary storage and then to secure it in permanent storage. It was over 100 and some keystrokes, not counting the data, the descriptive data of the item you're putting in.
So what was it like when you got in there? If you could just give me just a bit, I mean, I can look at the shelves behind you and I'm like, wow, that looks pretty clean, but I'm just curious, when you finally did get into the evidence room, just give us a quick overview of what did you see when you got in there?
Yeah, well, what you see behind me, we have those high index rolling shelves. So those were in place already.
Yeah.
And it was somewhat organized, but if an officer came to the window to check something out, it could be a little bit of a challenge to find it because it was a little, the system they had for storing was a little disorganized. So that was a challenge in itself. Then our bulk facility where we kept our big stuff was, I'll be kind here, it was a little messy.
Okay. Well, let's do this. We've actually got a question that came in, and it does make me want to take a left step here because somebody's asking, how big is the Bowling Green PD? And I think what we'll do is let's hop into, hopefully, Max, can you confirm right now that I'm displaying a evidence report on the screen, the 6-year inventory comparison? Are you seeing that, Max?
Yes, sir. I see it.
Perfect, great. So here's what I'm going to do to give everybody a bit of an understanding of how big they are. This is a report that David puts together for his agency every year. In fact, he's told me he's going to give me the Microsoft Word version of this so that I can put it up into the community group and everybody can have this report. So David, before we get into what this report is and what the why of it is, let's just get some really basic stuff about your agency so that everybody knows the size of it. How many officers do you guys have?
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of demographics. We have a allocated human resource allotment of 130 officers. We're in a this is a municipal police department. It's about 75,000 population with the entire county population of about 130,000. But this community serves probably the entire South Central Kentucky area of commerce and industry.
Okay, excellent. And you mentioned earlier you have you have two full-time custodians in the evidence room. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. And so when I look at something like this, I mean, by the way, this is really cool. This is something everybody should immediately have access to. You know, like the very first question somebody wants to know, how much stuff are you bringing in every year? So as we go through, it really helps give some context as to what we're talking about when somebody understands how many officers, how much evidence. This is how many pieces of evidence you're bringing in year over year for the last 6 years. And that's, I mean, you know, it's somewhere in the range of 36 to up to 50,000, but it looks like you're right there in the middle around 45,000 items.
Yeah, now that's our year-end inventory, what we're actually sitting on at the end of the year.
Sure.
So our intake, we're averaging monthly intake of probably 750 to 800 items per month.
Sure.
Now, what we're doing that maybe some agencies are not doing is, and one of the graphs will show that 50% of our inventory is media related, which means it's body cam, car cam, hard burns on a disc.
Yep.
So, you know, that's taking up nearly 50% of our inventory. So that's one of the challenges that we're looking at here is there you go. There's that graph, the pie chart there that perhaps we could lessen our inventory if we can get this media, which is probably some video and audio interviews by officers and investigators, and the body cam and car cam on cloud storage. And then we wouldn't have that large media inventory there.
Yeah. We can cut back to that and talk about some of the specifics in there, but I will say it's important for everybody to have an understanding that, and it is interesting to see that 50% of your intake is digital media stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, as you would expect, drugs is a big portion of that right there. And then you can see how it goes down the line. I think it's cool, David, that you have this report available and ready. And something you explained to me earlier, maybe let's just hop into that since we're into the report right now. Who do you send this report to, and why do you send this thing out?
Yeah, it goes to my immediate boss, which is the commander of logistics, and it makes its way up the chain to the chief. So the reason we send this out is that the department and even the staff that works, you know, the two of us that work in here, we need to know, we need to see a snapshot picture of what our evidence room is looking like. Mm-hmm. We can make projections of maybe, you know, it might be reaching capacity or that we need to get rid of some things. So it'll make its way up to the chief, and actually it holds the department and maybe leadership specifically accountable on what the state of your evidence room looks like.
Mm-hmm. I think that's an interesting statement you make right there, because I think a lot of people, and it's probably well identified by the people in this group, they probably feel like the organization doesn't care about what's going on, or they seemingly care when there's a problem. There's no doubt that attention is paid when there's a problem, but how do you get your agency involved or engaged before the problem comes to your front door? And this is for certain one of these ways. So has anybody asked you for this, or did you just take it on your own to report this stuff?
No, I decided that the staff, the two of us decided this is what we needed to do. Yeah. And we started this, well, probably not long after you and I met. And we didn't have this capability of doing this with our old evidence management module. Yeah. So once we converted to the current product, which is SAFE we're using, it was easy to do. Now, we were looking, if you take an analysis and do this properly, then it's hard for the department to say no if you have a specific need.
Yeah.
So we were looking at, we had an old bulk storage facility. So we were looking to build a new one, which is on our grounds here. And the process was underway of getting it approved and all, but we submitted this analysis to our board of commissioners, which looked at it and determined that hey, there is a need that we need to build a new bulk storage facility. which was completed about 3 years ago. That's our monthly intake.
Yeah.
And it's, you can see it's averaging pretty consistent. So you can project, hey, we're going to have, 750 to 800 items coming in per month. And that runs almost year to year.
Yeah. I think, again, the part that maybe I want to elaborate on is so many times people feel like their agency doesn't care what's going on. I think is what David is showing here is you can't wait for the agency to come to you and ask what you need, or, that simply doesn't work. You have to take the initiative from your side to begin to push this stuff up the chain. And I would say there's a difference between walking into the chief's office and saying, hey, we got an evidence problem, I need more money. That's what a lot of people like to do, is just, hey, I need more money because we're running out of it. If you're doing this consistently over a period of time and making them aware of what's going on, your argument of walking in and saying, hey, all that data I've been feeding you for years, how it's been showing that space is running out, this is the argument being made. This document is the argument, not your verbal argument what's going on. So I'm such a fan of stuff like this, and giving largely your agency is not going to ask for this. Nobody asked David for it. What he said in the context of that I think is so important is that he went to them with the data and not went to them with a problem. At the time, it was just, hey, here's what the data is. And then, I'm not guessing you thought that it was a setup for an ask down the road, but it just turned into, hey, you got all this data, now you can see the problems I've got going on.
Yeah. Hey, Ben, by the nature of the operation within the department, evidence is sort of out of sight, out of mind. It's a secure area. Yeah. People can't freely come and go, so they don't have a picture of what you're looking at. And this reveals what the state of your evidence room is. You can't ignore it. Or if a department does choose to ignore it, then when something goes horribly wrong, then you've got this report indicating that, hey, year after year, this is going on.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So let's come up to this real quick, because this is probably the big one that most people in evidence care about, is how much are you bringing in and how much are you sending out every year? Yeah. And so, just from a quick spot check, I can see that 2 out of the last 5 years you've disposed of more evidence than you brought in. But like something really big happened in 2021. Why is there such a discrepancy last year versus the 4 years prior to that?
Yeah, there's a good answer for that.
Okay, you know what, David? Right now would be a great time to share that answer with us.
Yeah. So here's how we do, and this is an avenue that we need to improve upon for our agency. We're not doing auto dispo. Pam and I have been kind of pushing that for a number of years.
Thank you all for joining me today.
Little roadblock to occur.
It looks like we got finished a little bit earlier than I expected. It was a fairly short webinar today.
We do what we call batch
I thank you all for joining.
Disposals.
I hope you all have
once a year we send out our evidence
Thanksgiving coming up,
to the officers.
They
have the opportunity
eat
to
lots
mark
of
those on paper to hold
pass out on the couch
dispose
somewhere.
of.
Thanks again, everyone, for joining the webinar, and
from
hopefully
a lot of
you'll
other
be with us
states
again next time.
Here in this state,
Bye-bye.
we do not have a statute of limitations on felonies. So, you may be stuck with holding, a class D, which is a low felony, for a long time if an officer's not feeling comfortable to get rid of that. So last year we developed a flow chart in consultation with our prosecutor's office to guide officers on making the decision on, do we hold it? Do we get rid of it? Mm-hmm. So we put together that flow chart. As a result of that flow chart, you can see that we had a mass purging that occurred.
Hold on. I want to park it right there, David, because I don't mean to laugh at it, but so let me explain why I'm sort of chuckling here for just a moment. So for everybody's benefit, I threw the flow chart up on the screen. I think this is the first time I've seen it. When did you develop this?
We developed early last year, early 2021.
Okay, so here's the part that I want to dig into. If I've got this right, what you're telling me, and David did throw out a term a little bit ago that some of you may not be familiar with. He said something about auto dispo. So auto dispo is a feature of our software where cases come up for review and it sends out a notification to the officer, and it's all done electronically. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. But the point he's making is they don't use that feature in their organization. They use a more manual process of paper. But what you're telling me is you developed a flow chart to help them better understand what to do with evidence, and somehow you went from, you know, almost no, because you developed an Excel document, your dispo blew out the roof. So you're going to have to elaborate on that a little bit for me and probably everybody else.
Yeah, of course, again, you know, without a statute of limitations, you know, on the officers, you know, you may be holding something for a long time because you're apprehensive about getting rid of it. So we talked to our prosecutor's office about, yeah, look, when would you not prosecute a case? So we're looking at some low-level felonies that after 3 years, perhaps, he says, I'm not prosecuting a case after 3 years or 5 years or whatever, but he opted for 3 years. So you can go down this flow chart and it'll ask you immediately, and it might look a little complicated, but once you start flowing, it goes pretty quickly, you know.
Yeah.
So it puts you, you know, it pushes you in a direction. If this is a homicide or a sexual assault or some DNA, then immediately, you know, you stop at that point if that's what that evidence is. You follow the flow chart around. If there's a defendant or if there's no defendant, and it you know, it flows you directly to whether as to hold it, consult with a prosecutor to get rid of it, need a court order to get rid of it, and that actually was very helpful in seeing that huge 17,000 number pop up on dispositions for 2021.
I'm telling you, there are people, I mean, I'm stunned by what I'm seeing here, because like, I've never heard of this. Like, I've heard of all sorts of things to help aid disposition, but you created a flow chart out of an Excel doc to train people when it was okay to dispose of evidence. And you're doing I would have argued you're doing a manual, paper-driven process. I would have said this is impossible to pull this off. And here you are, you threw this out and you doubled your disposition intake for a year. I mean, that's David. Like that is stunning to see that. So good for you. And I will say, we've got things flowing in. People are like, I'm totally going to steal that idea. So just so everybody knows, I posted this Excel document into the community group. So thanks to David and his approval, you can download this thing, mark it up, and now you've got a flow chart for evidence that it's seemingly you can help your disposition by simply teaching people when it's okay to dispose of evidence.
Yeah, I'll run it through your legal staff or your prosecutor's office to see if they're on board with it, and I would think that wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah. So a lot of people are asking the question, can we get a copy of this? I will say I did post it in the Facebook community group. If you're not in that, we can help you get a copy of it afterwards. But I would say get in the Facebook community group if you're not. And you know what? I should go back to that. Here it is on the screen. Go to facebook.com/groups/evidence management. And there's almost 1,000 people in this group right now. And you want to be in there because it's where people are asking questions and finding out how to do things. And so today we posted this Excel document on there, and in a little bit I'll post the Word document on there that of the statistical reporting. So, all right, well let's move on from this. That document is phenomenal. Is there anything else you want to toss out about that?
No, pretty self-explanatory. If you just follow it, and you can modify it to fit your agency. So.
Okay, so let's go back. So there's the explanation as to why you has anybody else looked at that? Has your agency staff looked at that and like, what the heck? What did you do last year? So I'm guessing I'm not the first person that's done that.
Yeah, no, yeah, it went right up to our boss. And I'll give kudos to our agency. They've been very supportive of our evidence operation. So without that, we wouldn't be sitting as well as we currently are. And don't get me wrong, is we have room for improvement ourselves, you know.
Sure. Yeah. I will tell you, while everybody has room for improvement, there's a lot of people watching this right now saying, I'll take this improvement right here. But you got to start somewhere. I would want to encourage everybody, like, you're watching 10 years after David started this process. He's already gone through the evidence management software and obtaining that. And you're seeing 10 years later. So this was not an overnight success, right? You didn't do this on day one. Is that correct?
No, no, not at all.
Sure. Well, and I think another thing you threw out, I'll go down through here. I think another thing you throw in here is you specifically lay out your drug intake and your outtake. I mean, I want to assume I know why you focus on that one, but do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. Drugs take up a huge, it's the second most inventoried item sitting in here. So we wanted to address that. And that, drugs, money, firearms, those are kind of high profile categories anyway.
So let me throw out a couple of questions that did come in that I skipped over. I didn't mean to. Let me see. Krista asked, how do you handle evidence that is also considered a record? Because sometimes the length of time to keep it is different.
Yeah, we took a look at that. There's some open records laws that affect some items, but actually courts have issued orders for us to destroy items like this, so they're actually on board with it. They don't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
So if it's in the evidence room, we don't keep reports. It's only evidence. So.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that question is talking about perhaps photographs. I'm not really sure.
I don't know specifically what she's talking about. It just says record. So Krista, if that didn't answer your question and you want more specifics, just post something back in there. And let me see.
So we don't have any records. We don't have any reports, any records on file here. It's just actually items that have been submitted as evidence.
Yeah. Okay. So somebody actually just posted records retention versus evidence status, a statute of limitations. I don't know. I'm sorry, James. I'm not following along. Maybe I'm just missing what you're saying right there. But
those are two separate issues. You have some records retention laws that govern reports, like your collision reports, your homicide reports, or any other kind of crime reporting. So those are record retention.
Yeah, somebody's saying it's a really complex issue, but the point to be made here is you have at least designed some chart to aid in the process of disposition, and regardless of how that works, it is clear that there are some results being generated because of it. Like that cannot be argued against. So
if you look, if you really dug into your state's record retention laws, you'll probably find that they are severely outdated.
Yeah.
And I think Kentucky is as well. So
I think the other thing David said that I would really encourage you on is talk with your attorneys, talk with the people that are in charge of this, get their answers, and then you can run with it. And it's, by the way, it would be even better to walk in with that flow chart somewhat made out and said, hey, here's what I'm thinking of. Can you sign off on this or help me with it? It's always better to walk in with a solution than to walk in with a problem. And something like that gets you way closer to that, to get to that. So, okay, well, let's do this now. So I think the other thing you said, and then we'll end it on this document right here. You specifically said you don't include a lot of information. I mean, I can see how many pages are there on this doc. It looks like it's 9 or 10 pages. Why do you only do this information that you give them?
Yeah, it's mostly graphs and maybe a little bit of commentary on it. If it's too much, nobody's going to read it. They're going to discard. I don't have time to look at this. So you keep it short. Even your graphs is really the telltale sign when people look at that. They may look at that and not read the commentary along with it. So
that's me, by the way. I would just look at the graphs. I wouldn't even read commentary. But yes, there's a lot of people like that for sure. Okay. So that's the end of the report. Again, we'll put that up on the community group, or if we need to email it out to anybody, we can do that. But so that certainly gives everybody a bit of an overview as to numbers and the size. Let's go back. Let's take you back to 2011. You walk in the room.
Please don't.
I know. Well, you know, I know you may not want to go back there, but hopefully you've had enough time and enough bourbon to get over, you know,
Yeah.
some of the nightmares of that. But for everybody's edification that's watching, I think it would be helpful to, you know, because everybody sees where you're at, but there's a story there to be told as to how you got from where you're at to where you're at today. And so you walk in your evidence room and just give us a brief overview of what is it that you saw when you walked in outside of the software being extremely antiquated.
Well, the software was number one. If it's not adequate, then you got a huge challenge to overcome.
Yeah.
So that's number one. Whatever staffing you have, they have to be organized people. If you have by personality, it doesn't make them bad people, but by personality, if they are disorganized and they're in your evidence room, they're in the wrong place, because you don't want a disorganized person managing inventory. And this is what this is inventory management. You're going to have a chaotic mess. And we saw some of that here when I came back in late 2011, that some of the staffing perhaps at one time had been a little disorganized. And it took a while to clean up some just some messy record keeping, filing, and organizational structure itself.
Yeah. So one of the things I remember when you and I were first talking with each other, I mean, I remember you being very, you know, a very technical, like the things you were saying were not normal to me. I mean, I sit down with a lot of evidence techs, and, you know, I could tell that your desire to produce numbers and statistics were really, really important. Is that your personality, or where did that come from? I mean, you were in law enforcement for so many years. Where did that come from?
Yeah, I don't know. My wife, you know, I think I have developed a reputation. If nobody said that to my face, of a little bit of OCD. OCD. There you go.
Yeah.
I don't say that myself, but I like order. I like neatness.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of my character. So I wouldn't say I'm a disorganized person. I have other weaknesses. Don't get me wrong. You know.
Yeah. Right.
Other weaknesses. But I'm more of an organized person. So that, you know, having that personality, that attribute probably helps a little bit in inventory management.
But in your mind, I mean, I do remember very specifically, in your mind, the number one thing you had to get resolved was to get something that would allow you to produce this type of information, and you knew you did not have that.
No, that's the first thing. And I actually, day one, I told my bosses, the old system, it has to go.
Yeah.
And he was in agreement all the way up to you know, the chief was in agreement as well. Yeah. So I started looking from day one. I started researching evidence management systems out there. There are two or three that kind of rose to the top. I made calls and inquiries, and actually benchmark tested those.
Yeah.
Yours being one of them. For 2 or 3 months, you gave me the ability to create an account and play around with it. And
so let's dig into that real quick, because I mean, there are people out here probably that are going to be looking for evidence management systems, and I don't need you to expound on us, but what I do want you to tell me about is, how did you benchmark those things? I mean, what sort of what testing did you do to compare 2 or 3 different systems that you were looking at?
I basically set up a real world scenario where we would make up evidence, we would intake it, we would shelve it, we would check it out, we would move it, we would dispose it, the whole scenario, to see how this system would work, or how a system would work.
Yeah.
So basically, we just create fake evidence and ran with it, you know.
That's, you know what, and a lot of people just buy software maybe on the recommendation of somebody else, and they don't do all of that testing. The thing I do remember about you, I was constantly getting questions about the documentation that we had. I had never seen anybody, like, before they bought the software, do the digging into the documentation that you had done. And so you know, I was great with it, but I remember lots and lots of questions coming in. So I knew you were doing your due diligence and trying to pick out the products.
Our our information technology department, municipal department, took our old evidence record and our old records management system and worked in with your company in getting that data migrated over. So once that data was migrated over, I was constantly checking to make sure that everything migrated over correctly, the dates were correct. We didn't want any major hiccups occurring that hey, the data is corrupted somehow, you know. And it went smoothly. A couple of minor hiccups, which came from our end of it, my end of it. It went very smoothly. So, yeah, I was a little anal about that, I guess, that this data migrated over correctly, you know.
Yeah. I would say, listen, while you know people might not like to use that word about themselves in this world of inventory management, you're wanting people that are fairly anal about a lot of things, especially you know the data that's being brought in. Because if you're not anal about your data, you're going to have all sorts of problems. And so you know as we transition into that, okay, so now you're in the evidence room, you've started to make some decisions on some things that needed to be changed. Was there anything about the physical facility that stood out to you as needing, you know, you said you had the rolling shelves already, which is good. Was there any facility problems you ran into? It sounded like you had the support of the agency. You were able to make the moves you needed to make. Was there anything about the facility that you were like, this is bad?
No, we got a pretty good facility, except for one component of it. We had a off-site bulk storage facility that would accommodate large storage of large items. It was an old converted evidence warehouse from an old fire station, and it was a mess there. This is not it, by the way, you're looking at. I don't have any of the old. I quickly shredded those.
Right. You don't want to remember that.
I don't remember that. So that was the biggest mess, and I have to say it was really a mess. I spent probably maybe 2 months getting that in order.
Yeah.
Just strictly there every day.
Okay. So, all right, so let's take another step in the process. Here we are, you got your software now. We're up to the point, and if memory serves me correctly, is it possible you had 250,000 pieces of evidence in your evidence room the day you went live into our product? Is that even a fair number? Do you remember?
No, we didn't have that much. We had, I think we had 60-some thousand, which is way too much for an agency this size.
Yeah. I guess maybe what I was saying, we imported 250,000 records, like even disposed evidence. There was 250,000 records that got imported. You were sitting on 60,000 pieces of evidence. You finally got your software, and now I remember having the conversation. What do we do next? Okay, you got the software, but now what are we going to do? And I remember, I don't know if you remember, not telling you, here's what you need to do, and it's going to take you years to get that done. And what was that? Do you remember what I told you you were going to have to do?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what we did actually is, and it did take us a number of years to get straight. Once all that data was converted over into our tracker system, I went in and just did a cursory kind of look at what's some of the oldest evidence. You know, now we had like expired license plates that was taken off a car during a traffic stop that had been in here for been in for 15 years. Well, that's kind of crazy, you know, to keep an expired plate that long. So I knew we had a ton of inventory that we needed to purge out. So we did, in consultation with our legal office and our prosecutor's office. That first year, after all that data got dumped into our new system, we purged out, I think, nearly 13. Of course, it's not as much as this past year. We purged out immediately under administrative purging. That's a little bit of risk itself, so you have to be careful about with administrative purging. But we were comfortable with what we were doing, and we purged probably about 13,000 items that first year, just to try to clean house.
Yeah.
And we gradually started growing and changing our operation and got it down to where it's smooth for us.
Yeah.
So that's
In hindsight, did you have any problems with that administrative purge, or it went off and there was never any recourse on it?
There was never, nothing ever came back to bite us. But the prosecutor's office looked at their current cases, their current open pending cases. So we felt relatively safe after talking with them. This, look, from this day back, we don't have any pending evidence.
Yeah.
So, and there's no appeals going on. So we did that big administrative purge, and
so somebody asked the question, I'll let you answer it. What is an administrative purge?
Administrative purge is, and first of all, I would say it's a risk. Okay. So administrative purge is you take a look at your evidence, and that should only really be done one time, an administrative purge. It's a one-time kind of, I got to get my evidence inventory under control. So I've got to make a arbitrary decision to get rid of some of this stuff. And I can't research every single thing because it will take me years, and it'll just is compound the problem if you're sitting on it. So basically it's a risk purge in which you feel comfortable saying that everything I'm getting rid of, and my boss has to sign off on it, the chief has to sign off on it, your prosecutor's office has to agree with it, saying, yes, we're in agreement, you can get rid of it. And it would be a help to
elaborate on that, because that's a really big deal. You're not going through your normal checks and balances of going through every item in every case and researching it as you would. This is sort of a necessity of, hey, we're going to line up a bunch of stuff. We're going to do a big one-time purge, and we're going to get everybody to sign off on it, but they understand the risk that, and my guess is you didn't get rid of any items that might, really could be in question. This was probably stuff that was like, man, there's no way there's value to this.
Exactly. You don't administrative purge any, homicide, sexual assault, major crime cases. So basically what we were purging out, we were even purging out misdemeanor stuff that was old. I mean, that we weren't, we were still sitting on that stuff. But your low felonies, your property crimes, your low level burglaries, those kinds of things, thefts.
Yep. So, okay, so to take another step in the process, here we are now. You got your software up and running. You've got 60,000 pieces of evidence that are active. You just got rid of 13,000 of them. Now we're sitting here at, say, roughly 45,000 pieces of evidence, but we don't even know if that data from the old system is still good. I mean, there's a process of working all of that out. So over the next couple of years, you moved, and maybe elaborate on it a little bit, you moved every piece of evidence from its existing storage location to somewhere else, but you did something with all that evidence. Maybe explain that a little bit.
Yeah, we did move it. We went in and basically, there was a lot of cursory review of it. So if it was, those major cases, we steer clear. We know we're going to have to sit on this stuff. But we actually did some research ourselves in the evidence room of some old evidence. Now, two people can't research, 50, 60,000. I mean, you just can't. It's a physical impossibility. Yeah. So we did a little at a time, and actually, I got the court destruction template from our prosecutor's office and say, look, rather than me sending a lot of this stuff over and your support staff having to research it, type up the court order, as I find this stuff, I'll do the court order and send it over. Your prosecutor can review it, sign off on it, and send it to the judge for signature. So we did some of that, but that's a slow process. You're not going to be able to do a lot of that with 50, 60,000 items. So over a period of a few years, every year when these disposition sheets would go out, and we'd only do it once a year, which is a need for improvement for our agency, we would get those dispo sheets back in which officers are marking this stuff for disposal. Now, what do you do when you have somebody who's resigned, quit, retired, and they're not reviewing their own evidence? And that's a challenge with any department. It's still a challenge with us. Yeah. But occasionally when we have modified duty officers, from an injury or something, they're going to be on for a significant period of time, we will send those retiree dispo sheets to those modified duty officers, let them research it and mark it up and send it back to us. And that's been helpful.
Excellent. Yeah. What I'm just curious, let me see. So a couple of questions have come in. Can you do an administrative purge on firearms? And
No, we did not do administrative purge on firearms. No administrative purge on firearms or money. We did on drugs. Of course, if the cases have been adjudicated, yeah, we did on drugs, but not firearms. And I might say for disposition on our misdemeanors, we have 3 divisions of district court, and each of those 3 divisions of district court handles our misdemeanor cases. We approached our county attorney, which handles all the cases in district court, asking if she would do an administrative order and get all 3 district judges to sign it. And it is an administrative order saying that 90 days post adjudication date, if there are no appeals pending, you may destroy misdemeanor evidence, with the exception of firearms, money, and jewelry.
Okay.
Everything else is a go. So we have that standing order that this goes out. The standing order goes out with the officer disposition sheets so that they know here's the order authorizing you to get rid of it. So misdemeanor evidence stays pretty clean from year to year.
Yeah. Okay. So here you are now. Let's do this as we begin to wrap this up a little bit. And listen, we could probably sit here and talk for hours on end. But let's go through a little bit. I've got some pictures on the screen here of what looks to be a really, really organized evidence room. So let me pop these up here, or see if I can pop them up. Here we go. And so that's actually, David, that's where you're sitting at right now, right? You're at that desk that's in that picture. And so this is your main evidence storage. Is that correct?
Yep, that's it. We use these high index rolling shelves, which you can maximize your storage in a smaller footprint. So that helps, if you've got restricted space.
How are you looking on space right now? I'm just curious, if I were to go in and look around your room, especially given last year's purge, my assumption is you've got plenty of space on those shelves.
Yeah, we're in good shape. Yeah, we're in good shape.
Yep. So is that all your drug evidence, or what is that?
No, that's a general evidence. So most of our evidence will fit in those 2 sizes of evidence envelope. When we slide them in, you can see the barcode label, the white label, attached to the package.
I'm just curious, do you order all that stuff by case, or do you just put it up on the shelf? How do you know what's where?
No, we do whatever shelf is available. You can see each of those bins there, each of the little niche there. That's in the individual storage location. So if something comes in that's on that one you're looking at the top right there, if we've got space in there, we'll scan the barcode, the location, and put it in there numerically. So it goes from old to new. So when an officer comes to check something out, they give us the case number and item number, and we know where to store it, and we can go and pull it. All of our system is paperless using Tracker. We get their signature like the FedEx and the UPS guys do. So we're not keeping paper chain of custody records.
David, I set you up a little bit with that question, because I will tell you, it's a bit of a running joke on my end. I've said this before on webinars. There is no topic in our company that will cause greater division between Tracker employees than having a discussion about how to store evidence on a shelf like this. And I advocate your methodology that you've done right here, but there are people in our company that, and listen, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that. I think there's valid points to both of them. There are people in our company that would say that right there is one large storage location. It's called shelf number 1. And that stuff should be ordered by case number. And, as you dispose of things, you just shift it to the left versus, in your methodology, you're just filling in holes. And so
I will say the more you move, your chances of an error occurring go up. So the more you keep moving things around, it's easier to make mistakes. So we just fill in gaps, because if somebody comes to ask for that, we know exactly where it is. It's in one of those little bins there, So if you do it numerically by whole shelf, then when gaps occur, then you're constantly moving and wasting human resource power to shift everything, and that's I hate that.
So, yeah, so somebody asked the question, do you try and put a case together on a shelf, or could it be all over the place?
Now, we do try to keep everything married together, but as you know, you may have a large case where it gets filled up in one bin, and then 6 months after that initial case, you got more evidence coming in, so you may have to shove it on another location. But with a good evidence management system, that's not an issue. And
Yeah.
we do inventory once a year, 100% inventory. So if something's been misplaced, you'll pick it up during inventory.
Yeah. And I've seen comments come in, and I'm telling you, there's something about that topic that just, it seems to be that there's two
That's
hard-lined opinions on that. And so,
Yeah, it is.
you know,
It can be controversial, yeah. But this system has worked out well for us. And I would never badmouth another system if they do it
sure.
differently. If it works for them, that's fine, But
Yeah.
this seems
Yeah.
to work well for us.
What I've always wanted to do is I've imagined, the Mythbusters show doesn't exist anymore, but I'd like to get somebody like that literally digs into that process and does all sorts of, David, that could be you. I need statistical
Yeah.
analysis. So Pam, if we could get that done, Pam, who's listening back here, if we could take one shelf and just make it one large location, and then I want you to pick different, it's exactly what you did when you picked software. I want you to test that out and come back with statistical reports that show which methodology is better based on 20 different standards.
So here's my take. If you take that shelf there, and that's only one storage location,
yeah.
If you'd have to scan one barcode to indicate that one entire location. So if you misplaced an item somewhere along those 8 rows,
Yep.
and there's 56 bins there, where do I look?
Yeah. Well, here's what you're doing right now, David. A little while ago, everybody was talking about how awesome you were and they loved your Excel document. You are unwinding that with some people right now. So I just want to let you know you're starting to come down off your really big high. So the more you talk about that, the further you're going to come down. And I'm only speaking because it happens in our office. So
again, if it works well for you, that's okay. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. And I have seen departments do what you're talking about, something, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yep. Yep. Okay. There are lots of comments rolling in. In fact, here's the one. I'll just read this one. I'm with Team David. We do it the same way. So, yeah, that's what happens here. We split everybody into teams. There's this team and this team. And if Beth, I don't know if Beth is on here also. If I were to unmute Beth, who works in our office, she would not be on Team David. She would be telling Team David, you're wrong right now. All right, okay. We'll move on from that, but that is a fun conversation because we have a lot of that. We got a couple of minutes left. If you've got any question, actually, here's one that just came in. Where do you store non-evidentiary property, as in prison property, found property, etc.?
Yeah, there's no prisoner property stored here, period. Okay. So if it's personal property that belongs to an inmate, it has to stay at the jail facility. Yeah. So found property, we store it here.
Okay. It's on the shelf.
It's on the shelf. So we did not designate a found property storage location because we can find it easily. As a matter of fact, in the offense, you might, when you're creating your offenses, burglary and homicide and so forth, we have an offense called found property.
Yeah.
So every week we query a report for found property that's over 90 days old, and if it's not claimed, we go pull it and dispose of it. So you can easily find it with a good evidence management system.
Yep. Okay.
Is
there anything I'm showing off in here that you want to elaborate on? I'm just sort of rolling through some of the pictures of your evidence room.
But there's containers. I don't know how many people are using containers. Containers are basically several items grouped together inside a one container. So, and that came up initially a few years ago, and I was opposed to it. And then I quickly realized how wrong I was. And they worked out well. We made a move when we went from our old bulk storage facility to our new storage facility. We were already preparing for that move, and we put these in containers. So, a container there, I would scan that one barcode, and everything in that container would move with that to the new move. So it worked out well.
Actually, Dana asked the question, what is a container? Bottom line is those are sealed boxes. The only reason you do a container is because it is sealed. So that barcode on the outside of it, like what's in that picture right there, represents all of the items inside of it. All you have to do is scan that one barcode on the outside, and then it takes care of everything that's inside of it. And that's something that I would say is that a container, to be a container, it's got to be sealed. If it's not sealed, I would not treat it as a container, and scanning that barcode on the outside of a box that isn't sealed, that's setting you up for some serious heartache when something gets moved out of that box and then you're scanning barcodes on the outside of it. So, David, you would agree, I can see all the evidence tape. You only use containers on sealed boxes, right?
Right. And if you go, there's another photo that has a container that has a green label on it. It's probably
that one right there.
Yeah, so that's a container. As you can see, it's sealed with evidence tape, and we got two people initialing off on the evidence tape, and then we put this sticker on both seals. The bottom seal of the box, the top seal of the box, showing that the contents were inventoried and were confirmed to be in there, and two people sign off on it and date it, and we seal that up. And then, as an agency, you can say, hey, look, when we're doing inventory, we scan that one barcode and it counts the inventory, and you might want to say, hey, every 5 years we'll open up the container and confirm it and then seal it back up. So that's worked out well for us.
So somebody asked the question about doing an inventory on the container. At least in our product, I know that when you scan a container, again, it accounts for all the items in it, including in your inventory. So you don't, because you can't get to the items that are in that box. So that's the reason of doing that, and our system will handle that. I can't speak for other systems, but I would say that. Somebody wants to know where you got those green labels at. I'm assuming you just order those online somewhere.
Yeah, I tell you what, you can. I'll push a company here, but you can buy and customize a lot of products on Uline, uline.com. The boxes are cheaper. So we had those custom labels manufactured. Actually, that evidence tape there is polypropylene box sealing tape. We had it customized at Uline, and we use that to seal up our boxes.
Sure. Okay. Let's look at some other stuff here. I mean, we're just seeing clean stuff like that. That's just what you want to see. This is what everybody wants to see their evidence room look like. So if there's anything that stands out, just, why don't you explain this real quick? I see it has a destruction label on it. So what do you got going on here?
This is in our drug room. Once a drug item has been approved for destruction, either by the officer or the court order, we scan it to each of these individual boxes. You see, has a location on it, a barcode, and we'll scan the item in there, place the item in there. The boxes are marked. This is a destruction container. And then prior to destruction, in which we incinerate all of these at a commercial incineration plant, a person from Professional Standards will come down, audit those containers, and then they will seal it up. And the auditor will initial off on it. We will initial off on it, and then it'll be taken to the incinerator.
Very good. Okay. Flip through here and see. That's your I guess a thing to throw out, David. Your officers enter all their own evidence and print their labels. They do all that, right?
The only way to go. So, because if they're filling out paper and then submitting it, and then you got evidence staff that is now entering that data in your evidence management system, that's redundant. There's two people doing it. So if you're doing that, I would encourage you.
Yeah, there's no splitting hairs on that one. Some people may not have a choice, but if there was one thing in your evidence room you could do to make the most impact, it would be making sure your officers are entering their own evidence. That's for sure.
They know everything about that. You know nothing about that evidence coming in.
Yeah.
Okay. This is our new bulk facility that here on our grounds that was just built a couple of years ago. We got some storage bays, and by the way, that an analytical chart, end of year analytical chart, it was submitted to help justify the construction of this facility right here.
Yep. Somebody asked the question, do you do court orders for firearm destruction?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. Let's look at this. I think we're coming to the end. So is this like an intake room?
This is in that bulk storage facility. There's a bay that's reserved for vehicle processing. If you got to pull a car in, you know, it'd be nice. You know, you got budget restraints that we didn't put in a hydraulic lift, but you got creeper crawlers you can crawl under a car. But that would have been nice. But again, you got a set budget you got to work with. So that's just a processing bay for vehicles.
Sure. Okay. There's a different angle on that. Looks like bulk storage here. Is this downstairs? I don't even remember seeing this. What is this in that new facility?
Yeah, it's in the newer facility. It wasn't here when you were here.
Yeah.
So that's our
It's
bulk
been a
storage.
couple of years since I stopped by to say hi.
Yeah, that's the first floor. We've got manual stairs up on the second floor. It was costly to put in an elevator. It takes up a footprint of your storage facility too. So
Sure.
we opted for storage, and that's our second floor storage. Primarily, we are archiving things up there, long-term storage for a lot of biohazard DNA stuff, and we will eventually maybe move some archived homicide evidence up on the second floor.
Okay, well, we're at the 3 o'clock hour, so if you've got any last minute questions for David, now's the time to get it in. And David, this was awesome. I really do appreciate you coming here today and spending an hour talking with us. It's always great to get all of this. I'm certain I speak for everybody when I say I appreciate you sharing all that you did. This is, I will tell you, what David has done over a 10-year period of time with all the charts and all the graphs and all the inventory. He's done an amazing job to get it to where it is today. So kudos to you for getting that there. I see a lot of people asking for those charts. Max, we do have a way to find out who showed up here today, and we would have their emails, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll send out a post email to everybody with a copy of both the documents. Give me a few minutes to get the Word document from David or whenever. If you could send that to me, David, by tomorrow morning, we'll send out an email for everybody that was on here. We'll include the Word doc, the Excel doc, and if there's anything else you need, you can respond to that.
I'm okay, you sharing my email address if anybody wants to email, because I would be anxious and curious as to what other people are doing that we could integrate into what we're doing here. So I'm always wanting to learn what other people are doing as well.
Well, what I'd like to do is to get other people to commit to coming on and showing off their evidence rooms and doing this so that you can watch the next one. And so I'm always looking for everybody that's on here. If you are at all interested in hosting one of these things, if you don't mind being on a camera and answering some questions, we would absolutely love to have you take part in one of these virtual tours. I think these are the best things we do. I think this is people get the most benefit out of watching what other people are doing versus just talking about evidence management specific, like evidence management software specifically. So if people show up like they did today, we'll keep running these out there. Okay, well, David, I'm not seeing any, let me see here. Somebody actually asked the question, they're about to remodel. What is your one piece of advice for her?
For evidence storage is you need to maximize your footprint. So these high index rolling shelves will accomplish that. If you're designing a new building from scratch, our evidence room is away from the public area. So we have to take, for public releases, we have to take it kind of down to a hallway. So, if you can design your facility to have a release area near the public entrance, that would help as well.
Yeah. I'll add to that and say the evidence management system is number one. I think David would agree with that. It doesn't matter if you have high index storage. If you don't have a good system for managing and storing, it really is true that the rest of that isn't going to matter.
Yeah, that is number one. Now, aside from your facility, number one is a great evidence management system. And number two is organized staff.
Yeah. Yep. There you go. That's number 1 and 2. So we're out of time, everybody. Thank you so much for submitting the questions that you did. David, again, thank you so much for being here. You were a rock star today until you got into the evidence storage and you lost a few people. But I think you're a rock star, and I'm on Team David too. So we'll go with that. So everybody have an awesome day. Thanks for being here, and we'll send out that email in the morning. Have a great day.
Thanks.
See you, David.